Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone that has joined us today. Thank you for joining me today on our first webinar for 2019. This session is being recorded, so if you're unwilling or unable to be part of the recording, please drop off. My name is Ismail Nalwala, and I'm the CEO of IOTAP. I'm based out of the DC metro area. I'm planning to go for about 30 minutes today. So my company, IOTAP, is a Microsoft Cloud Solutions partner, and Work365 is the application that we have developed on Dynamics 365 for cloud-focused and service companies really looking to grow and scale their business. All right, moving on to the next slide here. So it's been a couple of months since our last webinar in 2018, and I wanted to wish everyone a very peaceful, productive, and healthy new year. Quick look at our agenda today. Main agenda for the webinar today is to talk about the new security requirements for the Partner Center and share some updates with you about that in terms of how it relates to Work365 and the version 2.1. So we will cover the why, what, and when for the Partner Center security requirements, and how Work365 will support this new model. I'll be sure to point out any action items and considerations for you. And hopefully I will leave enough time towards the end for this session and have some any questions addressed as well. So please be sure to ask your questions even during this presentation, and we'll pick them up towards the end of the call. Thank you. All right. So I can see from the registrations and the attendees that we have a mix here of partners. Some of you are new to Work365, and so for the benefit of the first-time attendees on this call, I'll just mention quickly that Work365 is a subscription management and billing automation solution that helps you create great customer experiences and run and scale your CSP business. So Work365 is built on Dynamics 365, the sales application specifically, and includes these 4 solution components. Subscription management and invoicing, where you can create custom products and services, generate invoices on a consistent and timely basis every single day in an automated way. We have a self-service component. This is built using CRM portals where your customers can manage their own subscriptions and request changes. These changes then automatically flow back to your CRM system and get recorded as changes, and potentially also get provisioned automatically for direct partners. We have the e-commerce and payments solution. Our e-commerce solution is where you can shop around, where your customers really can shop around and purchase brand new services in addition to managing the services they have with you. And customer service, where we have email to case automation, where you can automatically assign cases and route them to the right decks. All right. I'm going to do a quick poll here. So before I get into the meat of the discussion, I'd like to do a quick poll before we talk about this content. So appreciate your patience and your response here. I'm going to give it about 30 seconds. If you would please respond as quickly as you can, that way we can look at the results and then move on to the next topic. So I have only about 20% of the votes in. %. So if you haven't voted, would appreciate if you do. All right, I'm going to go to about 75 and then we'll close this poll. Okay, perfect. I'm going to share the results here. So it looks like, excuse me, about 15% only are ready with the MFA requirements or have enabled MFA, but majority of the folks are in the process of doing this. So I will certainly be able to help out, clarify some of the things that need to be done here, and then we can talk about how 2.1 can help. All right, thank you for that. Moving on. So I wanted to see if I could help us visualize what is really going on with the Partner Center and why some of these new security requirements are in place. So let's take a look at this landscape. As a direct partner, potentially not using Work 365, you have customer service or sales reps within your organization that access the Partner Center to make adjustments like adding subscriptions, adjusting quantities, and creating new customers, right? Your Partner Center is associated with your customer tenants. So these folks within your organization are accessing your Partner Center to make adjustments for your customers' tenants. You can provision, deprovision, and do a lot of things for all these customers. Now you have multiple customers and tenants directly that you can make modifications to. And then whatever you set up and manage for these customers is actually provisioned by Microsoft, where the financial and cost burden ultimately lies, right? And as a direct partner, you're required to have a billing automation system in place, which is where something like Work 365 or a CPV comes into place. And Microsoft calls solutions like Work 365 CPVs, which is short for control panel vendors. In an effort to improve the security, CPVs like Work 365 are required to register themselves in Microsoft. A CPV program is in motion, and Work 365 is officially in the CPV program. So basically what I'd like to do is cover some of the main reasons we have heard why these new security requirements are in place, and then we talk about what they really are. So firstly, lost credentials or claims of lost credentials, which result potentially in provisioning of unauthorized services. Sometimes there's sharing of credentials within the partners organization, which is also a bad practice. Now, when you bring in the CPV, which is the control panel vendor, into the mix for these direct partners, a lot of these CPVs are pure SaaS applications, which means that you have to log into their systems and they need to store the credentials for your Partner Center in their systems, which poses an additional risk in case they're compromised. Your credentials can be compromised as well, and there's potentially a risk of unauthorized access. And I will talk a little bit more about how Work 365 is different down the road, and how we feel about our security in the way in which we've developed a solution. So really the need here for direct partners is to lock down the CPVs and ensure that the partner reps that are accessing the Partner Center are authorized users of the Partner Center. All right. And in the case where you have multiple Partner Centers, this certainly makes it a little more challenging because you now have to have the same compliance requirements set up for both Partner Centers. All right, now let's look at how the indirect partner setup is a little different, right? So in the case of an indirect partner, you provision directly through your DISTI portal, in which case it is the DISTI security model that you will have to comply with. And the DISTI in turn will then comply with Microsoft security model. So in this case, whatever you need to do will have to be communicated to you by our distributor. And if you're indirect in this case, you certainly save yourself some headache from the standpoint of the Partner Center, but depending on which distributor and how many distributors you're using, you'll certainly have to meet their needs, all right? Work 365 impact for indirect partners is actually going to be minimal at this point. All right, so as I mentioned in the previous slide, Microsoft has introduced this concept of a control panel vendor, or CPV. And a CPV is like an ISV, like Work 365 or a SaaS application that provides some sort of order processing, marketplace, and billing automation for CSP partners. So I want to quickly recap what these requirements are, right? One of the main requirements is that there should be no storing of partners' credentials within the CPV's tenant. So now these are specific to the CPV folks like us. They have to use a consent framework and specify why they're impersonating the partner's credentials to access the Partner Center. And most importantly, support any future security requirements. and enable and allow the enablement of the MFA, multi-factor authentication, for all users trying to access the Partner Center, which is the human users and the system users, the system integration users. So today I'm actually very happy to announce that Work 365 is fully compliant with these new security specifications and APIs. Work 365 is a little different from most of the other pure SaaS applications in the way that we're actually just built. With Work 365, you control access and permissions to who accesses the system through the security model in Dynamics 365, which is obviously tied to your Azure AD to use Work 365, right? So you have an employee that leaves, you turn off their access in their AD, that will automatically turn off their access in Dynamics 365, and there's no third-party system to maintain, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Work 365 accesses the Partner Center for you through a provider model that is very flexible based on the provider that you need, right? Once you provide consent through the application, we will actually even clear the credentials from the configuration item. However, keep in mind that we don't save any of these credentials in our database in the first place. So Work 365 maintains your Partner Center credentials and authorization tokens completely within your Dynamics 365 instance. We don't keep them in our data centers at all. So really what this, so also like your customer data is also only within your Dynamics 365 environment and not within our infrastructure. Your Partner Center credentials, as I mentioned, will receive a token once you complete the authorization process and the consent process. And this token will, again, only be retained within your Dynamics 365 environment, right? So really what I want to mention is that all these requirements are fully compliant within Work 365 2.1, version 2.1. So what is the impact of all this? All of us know really well that sometimes being a Microsoft partner feels like a full-time job in itself, right? You have compliance requirements, changes in the program, changes in competencies, technology, and even the people you deal and work with, right, at Microsoft. Well, I have some good news. If you're using Work 365, we have one thing taken care of for you, and that is that we will ensure that we're fully compliant with the CSP program. And we did this quickly when it came down to things like the Microsoft Cloud Agreement, setting things up for the non-recurring items, term-based items, Azure reserved instances, and things like that. And now, of course, even with these security items, security requirements. If you're an indirect partner, then the implementation of the security requirements, again, as I mentioned, will lie with your distributor. They will hopefully guide you through the process. Now, once we get into the demo, or sorry, the experience of what this is like, I will walk you through how Work 365 handles the consent process in 2.1. And we will also take a little bit of actually, we will take a deeper dive into this on our training session, which is on the 29th of January next week. So I'll cover this at a high level, but deep dive on the 29th. So just recap here. You can enable MFA. And you can use your IURs with Azure AD Premium, Microsoft 365, or EMS to set this up for yourself. Keep in mind that multiple CSP tenants, multiple CSP partner tenants will need licenses for each of them. Even your sandbox environments will need to be licensed as well with MFA. Now, as I say all this, I have a strike through on that first line item. And I'll explain this on the next slide. All right. Now, this kind of brings me to the most important point for the presentation and webinar today. There is actually now no longer an enforcement date for the MFA. We learned this actually last night. Until yesterday, our understanding was that the enforcement would go into effect on February 4th. This information is absolutely fresh, and we will continue to clarify what the impact of all this is and we will make the information available to you either through the Yammer group or on future events. So I guess it's kind of a big thank you to Microsoft, right? I feel like one of those kids in school who really prepped hard for an exam, and then the teacher just postponed it. So we just learned this through the early adopter program and the security groups that we're part of, that you can utilize and support the MFA, but there is no enforcement date for it. So what does this mean? We don't know the complete impact of this yet. We're still working with Microsoft to clarify this. And if the secure application model, which is implemented in 2.1, will be enforced on February 4th. This means that 2.1 may be an optional upgrade, and we will confirm this again in the next couple of days. If you're accessing Partner Center directly, you will not absolutely need to set up MFA immediately. If you want to set up MFA and access the Partner Center securely, 2.1 will support it completely. And when the enforcement date is reestablished, we will do another training and webinar and things like that, get around these dates and get you caught up. All right, so hopefully that's as helpful as we can be right now. Moving on here. So we released 2.0 around the holidays in 2018, and we've been rushing to get this version 2.1 out the door to be compliant with the new MFA and security requirements. Version 2.1's main feature really is this security compliance feature. But there's also a couple more things I want to highlight that in addition to some of the other items, hopefully these are useful. There's now a notification alert on the reseller request. You are able to send the reseller request from the application. And when the customer signed the reseller or accepted the reseller request, you really wouldn't get to know when they did that unless you implemented a workflow or some sort of Dynamics 365 automation. Now what we've done is we've got a notification in place, and we do the automatic matching based on the email address of the person that received the request and the domain of the partner, of the customer that signed the request. So if we find a match, we'll create a match for you in the provider account. All right. We also have this new feature, it's in preview mode right now, called the Invoice Run Reports. And I'll show you that as well shortly. All right, so let's get into the changes that we talked about with the provider setup in Work 365. What you're seeing here is the provider form, which is the Partner Center provider in this case, and the configuration for it. You will need to specify this Partner Center ID from your Partner Center, and you save it. Once you save it, you will notice that there's a get consent link that gets generated. This button is visible when the Partner Center tenant ID is filled in. So only when this is filled in, you will see this link. You click that link, it opens up a pop-up, right? And you can copy the link that's generated from within the application. Use that's actually the partner consent link. And there's a shortcut to copy it as well. You take that link, paste it in a brand new browser. It's best to do it through the incognito mode. You'll now, what I'm doing here is I'm logging in as the admin agent under whose context Work 365 will access your Partner Center. So for a lot of partners, this is the same integration account that you're using. And before you do this, you may want to set up and enable MFA for the integration account, right? So I'm logging in using that integration account into this system. In the past, actually, if you had MFA enabled, our integration to the Partner Center would fail because the APIs and the integration and consent framework didn't support these roles and permissions, permission-based access. However, now with the CPV changes, so during the process, during the onboarding process, I would have to tell a lot of partners to turn off their MFA. Now we can support that. Now with the CPV changes, you can enable MFA on the integration account as well. As you can see, once I put that information in there, it'll prompt me for a code for the text message for the CPV for the consent, and now you basically get the consent pop-up. It basically declares its purpose. The permissions screen, the permissions are clearly listed here. And this is now explicitly stating the purpose and intent of the integration between the Partner Center and Work365. Work365 users who are familiar and have gone through the onboarding process have probably seen the screen during the setup. And so it's similar to that. And once that's completed, consent is given, you will need to, you'll get this page. Basically, it's our application page, says the consent is complete, and now you may close this window and proceed, right? Remember that you will have to do this for each and every partner center or automatic provider is what we call them in your system. All right. Now, almost through here, quick look at a new feature that I wanted to share with you, which is kind of an experimental feature for us. We're calling it really the Work365 Labs, and it's available in 2.1. One of the main benefits and rewards of using Work365 is the automatic invoice generation. We now have a report that you can access from within the application that will give you the ability to get all the detailed information about your invoice runs that take place for your setup on a daily basis, right? So we have an invoicing process that runs every day and then figures out what needs to get invoiced and then invoices that. Now you can see the details of this by clicking through here. And this is potentially what it would look like. It'll open up a report. You know, you can check some options here to suppress empty runs or only show you the ones that failed. Now, what this means is that you can basically see on which day the runs ran successfully, and all you get to see is really what the error messages were, and maybe down the road some more data around the success of the invoice run. So here what I'm seeing is, you know, there were 2 failures. You're able to now see what the error messages were in regards to these failures, and hopefully you can then fix them and then rerun the report, rerun the invoice manually if you need to. All right. With that, I'm going to conclude the bulk of the presentation here, and I'd just like to close out. And I'd just like to address some of the questions we get asked consistently before I wrap up here. This webinar will be available on our YouTube channel and our Yammer group, and even on our website. Work365 is available worldwide, actually, and can be used for indirect and direct partners with 1 or more partner centers as well in multiple countries. We support multiple currencies, countries, and the only thing is we have English as the only language that is currently supported in the application. Version 2.1 will be available for you to upgrade through the Work365 Help and About page. We'll post an update on that on our Yammer group shortly. Also, I wanted to clarify that we are still investigating 2.1 and on whether it will be a mandatory update before February 4th. So please look out for the announcement on that on the Yammer group. And out of kind of popular demand, I guess, in a way, and to help out with some of the timing of these webinars for partners out of Asia and Australia, we're going to be doing these webinars in actually 2 time zones now. The next one covering a similar topic will be on January 30th at 11 a.m. IST, which is Indian Standard Time, out of our office in Mumbai. So hopefully between these 2 time zones, you'll be able to catch one of them going forward. Just keep in mind here, there's a registration link for our training and onboarding if you're still on the fence and thinking about this and you're a direct partner. After March 1st or sometime in March, you'll need to be compliant, otherwise you won't be able to provision through the Partner Center. So with that, I will open it up for questions, and thank you for attending today. So, all right. We have just about 5 minutes. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. Let me see if I open up the questions. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, sorry, I've seen a lot of questions around audio connectivity and things like that. Hopefully, all right. So it looks like somebody was struggling with using GoToWebinar. So yes, I have a question on whether instructions will be available for version 2.1. Absolutely. Detailed instructions will be available for version 2.1. And we're going to do this again next week through the training session as well. So yes, detailed instructions will be posted through the documentation site that we have, help.work365apps.com, and also on the Yammer group. Thank you, sir. I don't have a lot of questions. I'll hang around for another 2-3 minutes. If not, Feb 4th is postponed. So the MFA requirement for February 4th seems like it has been postponed. That's what we know as of today, that you don't have to have MFA in place to access Partner Center by Feb 4th. That's kind of what we know. All right. A couple more minutes. I'm hanging around. All right, looks like we are wrapping up. We're going to call this a wrap. Thank you very much for being with us today, and we'll post the recording of this on our regular channels. Bye-bye. I'm going to end the webinar now.